So I just wanted to welcome Rulon Brown here to the Everything Saxophone podcast. Hey, Rulon, how you doing?
Hi, Donna. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. I have to tell everybody this story. It was NAMM this year, right? NAMM 2018,
Yep.
where I was walking around. I was actually looking at horns, and I just happened to walk around, and I saw this interesting booth, this interesting setup, where Rulon had, I think it was a computer screen or something, talking about these new products, and I started to pay attention. And it was really very interesting. He was talking about, preventing your keys from sticking, and then also preventing like pad rot, especially with the palm keys, and that's an issue for me. But then, who walks over but these three guys, these three older gentlemen, and they start peppering Rulon with questions. What about this? What about that? Well, we do this, we do that, and he kept his composure and his cool, and it was really great. And I just thought that was the most awesome thing, aside from the product, but the way you handled that. And they admitted they were like having fun with you, but I think that was so much fun to watch, be a part of, but also just the way you handled that was really awesome.
Well, that was, I think, day 3 into NAM, so I was a little loopy and willing to play back with them. I swear they were like a bomber squad from World War II. They were just coming at me, but nice guys, and we had a great time. But they had some good questions. I mean, it's a new product, a new concept, so it's fun to get questions like that. Yeah, it was great to meet you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just from like a sales perspective too, I think that was incredibly valuable for you because like you said, it is a brand new product and you do want to run it through the ringer, so to speak, and
Yeah.
make sure it'll work in all types of situations as best as you can. So yeah, so we met at NAM. I don't think we may have been Facebook friends, so to speak, but we met at that point. And what really sold me was your passion and the research that you've done. And we're going to get into this, in a few minutes, but just the passion and the research that you've done for both products that you've made. I was just like, man, this is going to go far. This is really good.
Thanks. Thanks.
So yeah, tell us about your background. I was reading, your bio, and I thought it was so interesting. You grew up in Anchorage, Alaska.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah,
about that.
Woolley, Anchorage, Alaska. Well, that's the big city, That's the metropolitan center of Alaska. Yeah, my parents moved up there, and I was born and raised there. And I was really lucky. It's a great place to grow up. When I was growing up there were tons of young families, great schools. The National Endowment for the Arts was pouring a lot of money into some of the school districts there. So I was really fortunate to be able to go to an NEA magnet arts high school we just had amazing resources and great teachers and really amazing opportunity there to make music. And I was a sax nut. I was just a total sax geek. And I think my parents knew it, and they just, thankfully, they, helped nurture that. And I ended up at 14. My dad begged the local music shop to let me start sweeping the floors and apprentice. And so I began learning sax repair at 14, and then I eventually left Alaska and went to go study music and become a professional performer.
Wow, that's actually a really great opportunity. So, you were apprenticing in that shop for how many years? 4 or 5?
So, yeah, I guess it would have been. So I was there at 14. I left Alaska when I was 18. Moved to Seattle, studied music down here, and then I went back and worked for a summer back with John Kagerer at the Horn Doctor, an amazing allied trained master technician. He's one of those kind of gems, diamonds in the rough. He just loves Alaska. He loves flying his plane. He loves fishing and hunting. And so he's this master repairman up there out in the boonies of Alaska. But he's a great resource. So I went and worked with him again for a summer while I was going to college. And then I worked for another music store doing repair. So I, between repairing saxophones and woodwinds, and then studying music full time, that was my post Alaska life in Seattle. So yeah, I did that, and then eventually transitioned from study into touring and composing and performing. And now I repair my own horns and horns for friends. But I've got some other things keeping me pretty busy right now with my with key leaves and with just being a musician. So.
So, so you toured the U.S. and you talked about that you're a composer and all those types of things. Do you have any CDs out of your own music, and what style of music is on those CDs?
Sure. Yeah, I have several CDs out, and they're available at my website, rulonbrown.com. There's an EP with some of my favorite hymns done in a kind of world-influenced improvisational style. I have a solo project that I did completely on laptop while touring Central and North America. And that project is inspired by the idea of the American dream, the good, bad, and ugly of it. And then my most recent album is with guitarist Bill Horst. He's a fantastic guitarist that brings a lot of noise and extended techniques. And so he was great, amazing player to work with, really inspiring. And then cellist, bassist Paul Rucker, who is also an extraordinary visual artist and kind of blowing up right now on the international fine arts scene. And then global percussionist Jeff Bush, who's done a ton of work in Brazilian music, Latin music, and every project I've ever recorded has included Jeff. He's an amazing musician, and I love working with him. So this was kind of a different band. When you look at the setup, it was bass, cello, percussion, and kind of noise, extended technique guitar, and then I was playing saxes and flutes. And we did kind of a progressive rock style project, and we put the band together for a tour of Nicaragua. We were playing the International Jazz Festival, representing the U.S. There, and it was a lot of fun to start that project up. And then after the tour, we came back and recorded live in Seattle, and it's one of my favorite albums. And I guess luckily my most recent album. It's good to like the thing that you did most recently. Yeah, so I have projects like that available, and then yeah, I also do some side work here and there with bands.
What's the name of that CD?
Oh, it's called Vida.
Can you spell that?
Vida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So. I'm trying to learn Spanish. I love Latin music. It's inspired me a lot. One of my early mentors was Jovino Santos Neto, and an amazing composer and pianist. He was a protege of Hermeto Pascoal, one of the legends of Brazilian jazz and improvised music. So I have this love affair with Latin music, and it comes up a lot in some of the rhythms and the way I think about improvisation and melody.
This is fantastic because there's, like I said, we just met like this past January at NAMM. And, I've gotten to know you over time, but I didn't know all of this stuff that you're talking about now. And I think it's going to be great for the listeners to hear this too, just your influences. And also, especially, knowing, and I knew this, but knowing that you have that repair background, I think is huge for when we talk about your products, because you know how things should work and what doesn't work. So I think it's great. And I want to hit one more part of your background that I thought was really interesting.
Sure.
It was called the Seattle OnHold program that you created.
Wow, you dug deep. You did your homework, Donna.
I did.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So Seattle OnHold. So one of my day jobs, and it was really fortunate. It gave me a lot of the experience that allowed me to be able to create key leaves. One of my day jobs was managing performing and visual arts programs for the city of Seattle, the mayor's office of arts and cultural affairs. was really committed to kind of trying new things and trying to engage people, especially around city hall and public space. So I was the lucky guy who got the chance to create a concert series featuring Seattle artists at City Hall year round, indoor and outdoor. And that went pretty well. We were having a great time. People were loving it. And of course, it was a great feature for the local musicians. And I'd been doing, production work for years, booking shows and touring bands, my own and other bands. And so one day, the director, who reports directly to the mayor, said, "Hey, I need you to figure out how to feature local musicians on the phone system." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. That sounds fun. Let's do it." And I didn't know anything about PBX systems and all this junk. And I got together with IT and we started looking at it and realized we needed some sync licensing agreements so that, we were being square with the musicians and treating them well, and honoring their licensing agreements and so on. So that was the beginning of me getting into licensing music, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I got to test my DJ chops, and I was doing voiceover stuff with this. You're listening to Seattle OnHold. It was just all kinds of music. And the thing that made it really fun was the entire goal of the program was super inclusive diversity of the Seattle scene. And New York and LA, they have tremendous music scenes, but one of the things that Seattle is really known for is that it incubates. We're kind of a feeder scene, and there's all kinds of different people from all over the world that come to Seattle. They hang, they collaborate, they come up with these weird mixes, and then they usually move to New York or LA. But it's a really cool scene. And so as a programmer, I basically got to put my ear to the ground for, I think it went for 5 years or something like this. And then it went on a little while after I left the city, but it was great. Koto, Japanese koto music and experimental orchestras, and of course great rock bands. There's some really great jazz bands in Seattle. It helped really tie me into the community and connect to artists that I normally would have no reason to share a stage with. And it was really fun. It was great. And when we launched it, I'm sorry, I'm just going on because I get excited thinking about this. I haven't talked about this in a long time. When we launched it, we asked the mayor's office if they would put out an official press release on behalf of this phone system feature of music. And and luckily they did it. I convinced them to put out a full mayoral press release about this, and it hit the front page of the LA Times and AP Wire, and we were the first city to ever feature local musicians on our phone system, which I know kind of is okay, it's a little geeky and weird, but it was really fun. It was a great project. The musicians were excellent, and it was a fun way to kind of give back to the community.
I think it's amazing, and it's so different. I've never even thought of that or heard of that. I think it's fantastic. And what I'm getting out of this too, I know Seattle's the place where incubation definitely happens, but it sounds like there's such a really tight-knit community there in Seattle.
Yeah, it is. It's a big city, but it still has a small town feel in many respects. Yeah. And especially in the music community. I mean, you can get to know your neighbor pretty quick. and it makes for really good collaboration. If you can play, and if you can make music and write, and there's some great things to do here with really amazing artists to play with.
That's awesome. And that's, in a sort of sense, it's a good plug for Seattle, and all the things that are going on there. Now, what I'm interested about also, so you've had this great background, and it's varied. It's not just playing, it's not teaching, it's doing a whole bunch of things. What led you to come up with something like Key Leaves? What led to this invention?
It was a little bit of evolution and a little bit of that spark where something just kind of oh, wow, what about this? Um, so I like I said, I grew up fixing saxophones. I worked in a couple of music shops, repairing um, and so I had the mechanical background, and I was tinkering on my own horns, trying to solve the problem of sticky keys. It had annoyed me for a long time. I'd seen how horrible it could be for other players. um, and I was just kind of tinkering with ideas, and and out of that evolved these shapes and placements that felt right, and they were working on my own horn. And so I um, so my early prototypes were you know pretty crude, but then over the course of a year or so, I kind of refined something that felt more right. And then my wife and I, we were talking about, like, man, is there a there here? Like, could we do this? Is this like a product? Like, what is this? And we started looking into it. And at a dinner party, um, I was talking with this guy. He actually works at Boeing. That's the other cool thing about Seattle. There's tons of engineers and creatives. You've got Amazon and Google offices and Boeing, and so you have a lot of makers, either by creative makers or mental makers. And so I'm at this dinner party, and I'm talking to this guy, and he's telling me about how he has a patent um, to remove wine labels off of used wine bottles, and it's the technology for how to get those labels off and reuse the bottles.
Oh,
and
wow.
and I'm like, good grief, that's amazing, cool, tell me about that. What was it like to get a patent? And he's like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. And we're talking, and I'm like, I have this idea, but it might just be too simple. I don't even know if it could ever be patented. He's like, well, talk to an attorney. And I talked to an attorney, and they're like, yeah, yeah, there's something there. You need to, like, refine it. You need to come up with this stuff, and tell us XYZ, and maybe yeah. So in the process of having kind of created the general idea of, hey, let's leave the keys open to dry. We'll use the, like you said, the little key leaves, key props to slide under the key arms. In the process of that, I was then trying to write my patents, and I kept thinking about the small high keys, like the palm keys and the high F sharp, and I was thinking about other woodwinds, other woodwinds that use pads. And on a road trip, I'm driving on a road trip. The kids are asleep in the back of the car, and my wife Kristen is reading in the passenger seat. And all of a sudden, I have this, like, oh my gosh, there's another thing. Oh, and it'll look like a spider, and it'll it'll do this thing on the tone hole. And I, like, got so excited, I pulled over to the side of the road, and I like grabbed a piece of, like, I couldn't find paper, so I grabbed tore off a piece of cardboard, and I started writing and sketching, and I was, like, so excited, I couldn't wait to get where we were going so I could goof around on this idea. And that idea is what ultimately, I have it here somewhere, that's what ultimately led to this leaf prop technology for, like, the vent vine and the soprano key leaf prop, and this idea of centering something safely into the tone hole and gently propping open the pad without touching leather. So that one was the real lightning aha moment that just kind of came to me after a lot of percolating and simmering and thinking and preparing the other concept. And then from there, it's then, now we have the 3 products and others in the oven that we're working on.
Oh, this is very interesting. Okay, okay. There's so much here to unravel. First of all, it's so interesting how just talking about Seattle and you creating that on hold program, and all the other types of things that you created, and all the creatives that are around you, the engineers and that kind of thing. And I can see how these things started to come about for you. But and then you're talking about, like, patents, and there may be listeners that may be thinking about, may have ideas of products and stuff like that. So that's another interesting thing that you've gotten yourself involved with. So you've done so many types of things that are just really different, but really, really interesting. This is fantastic. So now let's dive deeper into the key leaves. And
Sure.
I know that I mentioned it before, you've done your research, you've tested it. Let's talk about your year in pad rot, shall we?
Sure. Okay, so year in pad rot. Um, so I had been testing the key leaves devices, the tiny leaf-shaped wedges that slide under the key arms and leave the keys open to dry. That's the whole concept, and my lovely little pun: key leaves, leave keys open to dry. So I'd been testing that on my own, and I have a really good friend who he's spooky smart. He invented a new type of industrial sugar, and he has dozens of patents. I mean, this guy is just a total genius. And in his spare time, he writes history books. He just got published in the Oxford Press for one of his history books. I don't know where this guy sleeps. Anyway, so I was talking to him at lunch, and I had been asking him for advice about patents and, how I was approaching the patents behind our devices. And he's like, man, this is great. It sounds like this is going really great. You got X, Y, and Z. So what about your data? I'm like, what do you mean the data? They work great. I've been testing them on my horns, and I've been sharing them with some select sax players, and they all love them. Like, what do you mean data? And it's like, well, I'm a food scientist. I don't bother patenting anything unless I can tell the patent office exactly what it does and how much it does, because then I get really strong patents. And I was like, oh, how do I do that? So on the back of a napkin, he quickly, we're talking it out, and he's like, okay, so what keys could you possibly test? What could it apply to on a saxophone? We jot that out. And he's like, okay, what's the worst case horrible torture test? I'm like, well, probably a 10-year-old who never swabs their horn. They never clean their horn. They play in band. They eat their mayonnaise sandwich, and then they sit down in band and they blow it into the horn. And meanwhile they sip a Coke while the band director's not watching.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, there it is. You should do a torture test where you have two identical saxophones, and neither of them is cleaned for a year, and one of them uses your product, and you log every sticky key event, and there's the premise. And I'm like, whoa, that sounds amazing. And then he's like, okay, but now we have to think about room temperature. We have to think about ambient humidity. We need to, and he's going like way deep. And we started researching different sensors that we could try to embed into the pads to see how much moisture is actually penetrating through the leather into the pad felt. And I'm researching this, and I'm calling Germany, seeing if we can get these special sensors, because I really just based on the anecdotal tests, I wanted to go deep into this and really see what a difference there was in the permeability of the pad leather, and how the pads stay more stable when you use Key Leaves products. And so we tried to create something that was that scientifically controlled. I bought some humidity meters and whatnot, and ultimately it just wasn't practical. By the time you were actually playing the instrument, in order to measure it in those ways, you'd have to remove pads, remove keys, and it was just, it wouldn't be normal playing situations. So we revised the test, and we basically came up with the idea of, okay, we'll just have an event log. And on my phone, I kept this log of any time a pad hesitated, that when you're going to play and it's just, and it just barely sticks and then finally releases. And then we kept a log of first touch stick, so that when you get the horn out of the case for the first time, you touch the palm keys and it's click, 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 because you got to unstick the leather from the tone hole. And then there was a category for severe stick, where you're playing and the note simply will not function. Often it's low C sharp or G sharp, and you have to physically reach over with your hand and unstick the pad. Yeah. So that's the worst case, right? That's when it's just severe malfunction. So we had these categories that we were monitoring, and every possible note that could stick, anything that stuck, we would monitor. And I bought 2 new Selmer Liberty saxophones, and these were Taiwanese made saxophones, pretty indicative of the student and step up market right now. They're bronze body, large bell design, kind of trying to emulate the Cannonball thing. Um, and they were brand new. They I checked them out to make sure that they were all totally functional. And to Selmer's credit, they came out of the box really great. They were actually set up well, and they played fine. And then we started the test. And for a year, it was no cleaning, logging, okay, start time, which horn is being played, and bringing both horns, everywhere, and logging every possible event that happened. And it resulted in a lot of discovery, for key leaves, because we thought, oh, this will help stop keys, but we didn't know how much, and we didn't know what else would happen when you help leave the horn open to dry. So in this test, like this is the horn that hasn't been cleaned in a year. This is horn B. There was sax A and sax B, and if you go to keyleaves.com/proof, you can see the side-by-side comparisons of all this. But so this horn was not cleaned for a year, and exact same horn as the other horn. And it used the Key Leaves Vent Vine on the top from high D up. And then it used the Key Leaves sax key props on the low C sharp, E flat, and then by association, the G sharp. And that was it. That was the only difference between the two saxes. Okay. And the results were pretty awesome. It resulted in a 98% reduction in any sticking keys. Wow. Without cleaning for a year. There was 0 sticking high palm keys from high D up to high F sharp. None, ever, because they never had a chance to sit and rot onto the tone hole because the vent vine safely opened them up to dry. There was no severe key sticking at all, ever, in a year of this low C sharp, G sharp, anything, no severe key sticking. It totally eliminated it. And so what started as this kind of maybe a little bit geeky, obsessive compulsive patent thing, trying to understand like what could we really claim as the function and the utility in our patents, turned into this thing where eventually my buddy, who's the food scientist and helped me set this thing up, he's like, man, this isn't a patent study. This is your story, man. This is telling the story of why every band student needs this. This is serious data, man. Yeah. And so it was pretty intense. But it was crazy, actually. It was nuts. I set up a time-lapse booth where I could periodically, like every 2.5 or 2 weeks, I think it was every week or 2 weeks, I forget. I would take off the low E flat key, and I would carefully take it off and put it in this jig set up in this like little photo booth, and I would photograph it in the same exact position to create a time lapse. And so it's a time lapse pad rot, and it shows side-by-side comparison of the pad over the year, the one getting really funky and crusty and starting to have all that growth and junk around the tone hole, and the pad seat, and then the other one looking essentially clean. So that's all at keyleaves.com/proof. And we have little camera angles looking down the body of the instrument, showing how the body tube even stayed cleaner. I did not anticipate that. I just did not think that the body tube would be so radically affected by using key leaves. So the vent vine, it helped what normally is trapped and capped, right? All the keys from high D up and your end cap, it just traps moisture at the top of your horn. And that's where you blow the most bacteria, the most yeast, the most, everything. And then we trap it up there. It grows and it thrives in the dark, moist environment, right against the leather and the tone holes. And then when you put the neck on and you start playing, you blow all that stuff down onto your bis key, and you blow it down onto your G sharp key. And so by using the vent vine and leaving those keys open to dry, and also the vent vine, because it has this, vent cap that breathes through the sides as well, the top and the sides, you've got way more airflow keeping those pads and the body tube healthy. So we, when we looked at the end of the study and looking at the inside of the body tubes, the one that did not use the vent vine and key leaves sax ski props, it had really nasty funk growing in there, and even into the neck, which again surprised me. I was like, really? It's all that stuff that at the top of your horn, when you're playing it, then slowly grows up into your neck. So you really can keep a much cleaner horn, decrease the metal corrosion, protect the pad life, and stop sticky keys. With this was a 98% reduction in sticky keys. Imagine if you actually swabbed your horn every day and use these products.
Oh my
That's how we
gosh.
do it as directed.
With this is really fascinating, and the thing that I'm getting from this too is the attention to detail. Yes, you had that conversation with that guy, the food scientist guy, but just the depth, everything that you do, this is a great theme. Everything that you do, you really dive deep into. You really get down to the nitty gritty. From what my perception right now, you're really diving deep into this stuff to really make sure that this is a really viable product. And it definitely is. And my question is, with the neck, could it be, was the neck attached, like, were you storing the horn on a stand and the neck was attached all the time? Could that be why the mold was growing up into that?
Great question. So one of the things that we studied in this was both the horns were packed. They had the same case. They were played in the same room under the same conditions, alternating. And then when we would store them between playing sessions, they were closed and they were stored at the same angle. So sometimes they were just, like you'd normally set them down with the handle up. Sometimes they were on their side. Sometimes they were upside down. And we would do that because you never know, right?
Yes.
Some kid's going to just toss it on the band shelf and however it goes. So we wanted to really, let's see what happens if we systemically, change this up. But we didn't store them on the, we didn't store them like out on the stand. We wanted to see what would happen in because usually pros do that, but often kids don't. And pros that are in a hurry definitely don't, right? If you're finishing a gig and you got to get somewhere else, you're lucky to do something real quick, throw it in the case and go.
Yeah.
And so we didn't leave them out on the stand that way. My suspicion is that, well, here, let me show you. Can I screen share?
Yes.
So let me share the screen and I'll show you the video as we talk. So here's looking down into the two body tubes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah, this was definitely gross.
Yeah,
I'm glad I didn't
right?
eat when I was watching this.
Yeah, so I mean, this surprised me. And all I can think is that with that much gunk growing in the body tube around the octave pip, near all the tone hole, surfaces and pad surfaces, that's without the key leaves, vent vine. That then, when you're playing, and these were played for hours and hours, that then has a chance to essentially grow into the neck. Because
Yeah.
when you look at the proof page, keyleaves.com/proof, when you look on here, this is the necks. You can see these little spores and clusters of bacteria and fungus in the one without key leaves products. There's just more activity. Granted, these weren't cleaned for a year, and there's still activity going on the one with key leaves products, but much more happening in the one that didn't. I don't have a real hard, fast scientific answer for why that's the case, other than, man, it seems to be the case that if you have this growing, it's going to work its way up the neck.
Yeah, and
Is
markedly so. Like, for those folks that are listening to the podcast, I'm going to encourage you to go to the YouTube video for this, and the link's going to be obviously in the show notes. But you really need to see this, because this is eye-opening, and I can only imagine. This is going to certainly make people, first of all, clean out their horns more frequently, but also really take into account, how you're cleaning them out and how effective effective both Key Leaves products are, because if you're someone that's finding that you're kind of getting sick a lot, strange colds or a lingering type of sickness, it could be
Yeah.
in your horn. I mean, you've heard the story, the saxophone lung story that came out from this guy from Europe who he didn't play saxophone. He played I think it was trumpet.
Bagpipe, right? Bagpipe lung.
Well, yeah, some people call it saxophone lung, some people call it bagpipe lung, something like that. But I think he played, it was clarinet, and he never cleaned the instrument, and he never cleaned the mouthpiece, and he was developing this really strange chronic illness
Yep.
that just would not go away. And then, they finally looked into his, they looked into his clarinet, and the stuff that was growing in there was just absolutely disgusting. And,
Yeah.
when you think about it, when you're taking a breath, yeah, you're taking an air from the outside, but, you're taking also air in, a little bit of air in from the inside of the horn. You are, it's hard to avoid doing that. If you look at these pictures right now, look at what you're breathing in,
Yeah.
so that should be encouraging.
Yeah, and like you can see in this picture of the high F tone holes, right? The high F tone hole of the instrument that did not use the Keeley's vent vine, you actually see this crusty layer of biomass with these white sporous kind of growth. It's disgusting. But any repair person is going to tell you, like, so what? That's nothing. I've seen things that crawl out of the sax. So this is nasty, and it is dangerous to health. But the other thing is just the life of your horn, especially if you've got a vintage horn or a horn you want to keep nice care of.
Yeah.
You're going to have less tone hole filing and leveling that needs to happen over the life of the horn when you keep that tone hole metal healthy. And not to mention just the pads and the replacement and whatnot of pads that wear out.
Absolutely. I also played trumpet as well, and I can play all the instruments because I was a band director for many years. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking about, what about brass? And what about we call them spit valves or water keys? It's interesting because it gets really disgusting around those areas. And I
Yeah.
don't know if this is some of the stuff that's coming up down the future for you, but, I could put that thought out there. Maybe some type of, brass sleeves type of, whatever product that, won't ruin the spring on the spit valve, but will allow that to air out because it's in the crook. It's in the
Yeah.
crook of the main tuning slide. And for some folks that have it on the third valve slide, it's the same thing. Just looking at what you just showed me, I could only imagine the stuff that's in that area too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's this is great proof. And again, Rulon's mentioned the URL. We're going to put that in the show notes as well. So my question is then, from the moment of conception to the moment of research, and then the moment that the product was out to market. And I don't know if you had the product available and then you did the research, or if the research came first and then you did the refinements and made the product. So can you give us a little bit of the, idea of, like, how much time?
Sure. And this, of course, would vary depending on, how you wanted to approach your product. So I got the idea, I started refining it. And, months later, I had the good fortune of connecting with that attorney, who then got me really thinking seriously about the patents. And that started the clock ticking, basically, because patents are really an amazing hoop jump of deadlines and filing and declaration of what it is and how it works. And so we launched, we launched in January of 2018, this year. And it's been essentially from concept 4 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. 4 years. When I started working on the products and really trying to refine them, it was a lot of trial and error. Lots of trial and error. I was making things in my garage. I was sculpting things. I was looking for the right shape, the right squishiness. We had different ideas about how we wanted to link them. And when we finally did settle on this, the design that we see now, we liked it because it had, the detachability the adjustability, and could really adapt to any alto, tenor, bari, or bass sax. But man, getting this right, it was oddly tougher than it looks because
Yeah,
when
yeah.
we were first starting, it was like, oh wait, um, this is too elastic, and our band was too elastic, and I thought, oh man, if it's too elastic, a 10-year-old is going to be in band and they're going to start slingshotting or whipping their neighbor.
Oh
And now
yeah.
we're gonna get banned from the band room if it's too elastic. And then we had to start researching different kinds of silicones and make it just the right kind of stretchiness where it still was, giving, but not so much that it became a slingshot or a whip. Um, and then the other thing that I spent a crazy amount of time working on was the squishiness. Um, because we tried different materials and different approaches to this, but we wanted something that, so that when you put it in, even if you went just really aggressive with it, it was squishy enough that the key arms aren't going to bend.
Mm.
Something that's going to hold it open, but not be so rigid and firm that it's going to do harm to the horn. So getting that right, and little things like, oh man, what should the exact shape be so it curves around the key cups and the body contours, things like that. That's where I probably went a little crazy.
No,
Probably
no, but
took more time than I should have.
yeah, yeah, but you know what though? What's again, it's just blowing my mind, the attention to detail. And I'm going to make the equation too for those folks that like don't have products but are players. This is the attention to detail that, we want to think about when we're approaching learning a new tune or, playing a show or putting on a concert or whatever. But this is what we see with designing a product, because I'm just thinking in my head, wow, thinking about the amount of squishiness, and then making sure that you get the amount of squishiness for every single piece, every single product that goes out. And then also with the silicone, the elasticity, but also, thinking about, okay, and I'm sure you've thought about this too, like this product, it's got to be a type of material that doesn't get dirty, or it's going to be very
Yeah,
durable for a long period of time. And, could you wash this if you needed to?
totally. So, there's cheaper ways. I mean, I'm not letting any secret out of the bag here. There are cheaper ways to make the product, but it doesn't make it better. That's for
Yeah.
sure. And believe me, I looked at them, because if you don't do something that we chose these materials because it's biosafe. This is something you're going to be touching twice every time you use your horn.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a urethane. It shouldn't be something that if it gets left out in the sun after a marching band practice, it's going to slowly leach chemicals to the surface of the rubber, and then the kid picks it up and absorbs it into their skin. That'd be totally irresponsible. It shouldn't be some sort of rubber that off gases and interacts with silver finishes or copper finishes on your instrument. It should be something where, if you have a little bit of key oil that gets on it, well, guess what? It's not going to seep in, because silicone is water impermeable and nothing sticks to silicone. So dust and dirt and oils, you can just rub off and you're done. You can rub it off with anything and you're back in action. So I really did, we looked a lot at different options and materials, and it, I wouldn't recommend doing something cheaper.
Yeah.
Because this is, it's meant to last. It's meant to be a simple device that serves you and lasts. So, and that's just kind of my ethic. I don't want to do something halfway and like, we got enough of that. We got enough of that in the world. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's do something that's good.
Oh, absolutely. And it shows so much. And I think it's just absolutely brilliant. It really is, just the level of detail and every single thing that you thought about. And you took like the worst case scenario, that fourth or fifth grader, beginner player, how they're going to treat their instrument, and really diving deep into, you know, either what it was like when you were that age, or observing kids and seeing what they're doing.
You know what it was? It was the years of repairing low E flat keys, replacing low E flats, cleaning, and at times having to aggressively clean and level E-flat tone holes because they're so rotten, so tarnished, so corroded. Taking a circular file and cleaning up those tone holes. I mean, we call it a gutter pad for a reason. And it's because, there are some spots on the sax that are just really prone to sticking. And then, of course, seeing my own students and even pros, man,
Yeah.
it's hard. If you're playing your horn a lot, even if you're swabbing all the time, some people have body chemistry
Yeah.
and breath
Saliva.
microbiome that
Yeah.
is, it's going to cause stick no matter what. So yeah, speaking of microbiome, my wife is a nurse practitioner, and she specializes in functional medicine, which really looks at whole system interaction. And so that was oddly also an inspiration when I was, talking to her about, this product and how I was kind of prototyping and refining it. That's where we came up with the idea for the vent cap, because we thought, well, hey, let's do the vent vine to open up all these high key pads, get them open safe. And my first one was actually just drilling a hole in an end cap
Oh,
and
okay.
like tying a string to an end cap. And I did that, and I was about ready to go to market with that. And then
Well,
one night I woke up and I'm like, wait a minute, my wife wouldn't do that. She wouldn't like address like half of the health issues and say, well, maybe that'll be okay. It's like, no, like what are we doing? Why are we capping all that junk in? Let's vent it out. So there was a lot of inspiration, I guess. And of course I'm going to give my wife credit because she's an inspiration to me. So yeah,
yeah.
that's
That's
her.
that's awesome. Oh my gosh. So now let's get into, can you show us how to, use the key leaves first, let's say on an alto, and then
Sure.
also you have something different on the soprano.
Oh yeah, sure. So this is the key leaves sax key props, and these adapt to fit every alto, tenor, C melody, bari, and bass sax.
Okay.
And the beauty of it is low C sharp and low E flat and G sharp often stick because they're shut, and so the pad leather rots onto the tonal. So after you're done playing, swab out your horn, swab out your horn. And then just slide the C sharp key open under the key arm like that. You can
Okay.
see how it's not touching leather, and like I said, it's squishy, so it's not going to bend your key. It's a nice kind of squishy silicone rubber that will open your C sharp so it doesn't stick and it air dries clean. And by association, that's going to open up your G sharp so it stays clean. And then you just come over here with the other little leaf-shaped prop, and these rotate on the strap, so you can rotate these however you need for your particular model. If in this case, I'll do it from this angle. You can see this post is kind of tall. It has a high post, so sometimes on bari or tenor, you want to arch up the key like this,
I
and you
see.
just slide it under like that. And
Got
now
it.
you got the gutter pad open, C sharp and G sharp. And now I did that really slow for demonstration, but I mean, once you know what you're doing with this and you do it once or twice, swab out your horn, you slide it under C sharp, slide it under the E flat, and you're done. It's like 4 seconds, and you stop the 3 stickiest keys on your sax. And then as far as the shape and how you can rotate these, so if you have a sax where like some of the early, like the Mark 6s, the super balanced actions, the Yamahas, all the modern Yamahas, they have some really cool key arm geometry. And so you can actually rotate this and then just caress around the key cup like that
I see.
on some of
Okay.
those horns. So on our website at keyleaves.com/instructions, we literally have dozens and dozens of videos showing how to use this simple product on bass saxes, tenor saxes, altos, all kinds of different make and model. But that's the concept. It's really simple enough that a total beginner could do it, and a pro running between gigs can still do this and get great benefit.
And I know this is probably answered in your FAQ on the website, but you can store your saxophone in the case with the key leaves on.
Oh
It's not
yeah, Oh
problem.
yeah, absolutely. Because well, yeah, that's absolutely right. So for example, like if I put this in here under the E flat key arm,
Okay.
and then I bring it over here under the C sharp key arm. Okay, so we're in business, right? Well,
Right.
if we put this in the case and we shut the case, the beauty is this strap is just a thin silicone strap, and it flexes and it fits however. And if it is for whatever reason bothering you, you just rotate it wherever you need to keep it low profile.
There you go.
That's no problem in your case. Um, we've never, when we were product testing this, one of our Key Leaves artists, Nick Toretta, he plays a Con New Wonder, or the Chewberry. He has a gold-plated tenor Con Chewberry sax, and he uses a Reunion Blues leather gig bag. And I thought, man, this will be a good test.
Yeah.
and and he's been using it now well over a year. I think he's almost into 2 years now. He's never had an issue, even in a gig bag, with the Key Leaf sax key props. So this one really does work in any case. It's totally case safe. Safe on all finishes, safe on in the case, squishy, so it's not going to bend keys, and adjustable to fit even bari sax and long reaches. You can detach the strap and reconnect it in ways that you can get really long reaches with these. And
Excellent. And
and they're bright, they show up in a dark case and a dark gig. They're easy enough. You can, take them off, toss them in the case, and then just grab them out easy and know what you're up to there.
again, it's every single detail you think about. It's amazing to me. It really is. And then while you're getting this stuff ready to show us for the soprano sax,
Oh, soprano,
um,
yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question because I know a lot of people will have this. And again, I know it's in your FAQ, but I want to just put it on the podcast. Hey, I use key clamps all the time. Uh, you know, uh, can you tell us, the difference between, obviously this is not clamping your keys. It's the exact opposite. So some people that use key clamps may be like, well, no, this isn't good. Can you talk about that?
So, sure, yeah. Um, Basically, the short answer is, yeah, I'm not a big key clamp fan. As a repairman, I believe that when a pad is seated into the key cup and then properly seated on the tone hole, it is something that can remain stable. It can remain stable and healthy by leaving it open. It's the same reason why our low C, our low D, all our open stack keys, those need periodic adjustment, but they're stable. They're not like falling off the horn, you know. There are keys that stay stable on our horn, and the ones that rot out and become disastrous to us in performance are the ones that are closed.
Yeah.
And so I personally, I'm not a big fan of clamping keys shut, unless, and here's the big unless you have to ship a horn in the mail, and then you're doing it for structural integrity reasons, because that case is going to get just hammered around in rough handling. Or if you have to check a horn in the cabin of a train or a plane, and then okay, you could do that. Now, I never did that when I was touring heavily, but I know players who do it, and more power to you. If it's a thing to help secure your horn during rough handling, I think then to me that there's a case for that. But as far as keeping the pad leather and the felt and the instrument healthy and playing well, you're going to have more success by leaving the keys open to dry. Unfortunately, key clamps are the one saxophone care accessory that is incompatible with key leaves. But like you, I think you told me this one time, Donna, that you actually you do use the key clamps when you're you have a rolling case, and you'll clamp up when you're rolling in the case. But then when you're between sessions at home, you use the key leaves, vent vine, and the sax key props to help keep the pads healthy that way. So yeah, I mean, it's a different philosophy.
Yeah, I know for me, like I will put the key clamps on when I'm traveling. I don't mean traveling by car. I mean flying on a plane. I will definitely use the key clamps because, I do basically get it in the overheads, but there's been times I had to check my tenor and I was happy I had the key clamps on. But
Yeah.
otherwise, any other time, I actually don't use key clamps, and
Oh,
I use
okay.
yeah, I actually stopped using that rolling case, but I'm glad that you reminded me of that too, because some folks do have the rolling cases, especially Barry players. And do they need to use key clamps? It's going to depend on the type of case that they have. The case that I had was not actually the best case, so the horn wasn't as secure as it needed to be. But if you do have a rolling case where the horn is really snug, you probably don't need to use the key clamps, and you can probably, you'd be fine with using key leaves and stuff like that. But yeah, for
Yeah.
me, that's what I do. I key clamps for when I'm flying, but every other time I'm using, vent vine and also the key leaves.
I'm with you. That seems to make sense to me. So yeah, I'm also really passionate about good fitting cases. When you custom fit, the Vent Vine and our Soprano product are custom fit, and our custom fitting process includes a case check. And if your horn is sloshing around in the case, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
When that thing takes a big bump, you're going to have bent keys or a bent body tube, especially. And bent body tubes are the worst. Like you say, on big cases like a Barry case, it's worth investing in a good case, because something like a Protec, a BAM, something that's really going to protect the instrument, it's going to save you a lot of heartache and damage.
And money.
Yeah, and money. Yeah. Wait, I thought that was the root of all heartache and damage.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
All right, so then can you show us the soprano sax?
Oh, sure. So the soprano has a little leaf-shaped prop, and this has a bump on the top. I don't know if you can see that here. Let me see. So it
Yes.
has a bump on the top, and it has a little ridge on the bottom. And we have a database of all kinds of different saxophones, and based on your make and model, we then fit the correct size to your tone hole. So then you just put this into the low C sharp tone hole, and that ridge centers into the tone hole, and the down pressure of the pad locks it into place, so it's not going to slide out. And then that little bump on top, I don't know if you can.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. I'll put it in front of my bald head. so then now you can see that bump on top is hitting the center of the resonator, not the pad leather.
Right.
So now you've opened the key, not even full height, but you've opened the key enough so that that can air dry clean and not stick and rot onto the tone hole. And again, because low C sharp is connected to G sharp, the G sharp is now open and can dry clean as well. So that's the soprano product, and it's real simple. That's something anybody can do after they're done playing, and help prevent sticky G sharp and C sharp.
Absolutely. Now, can you also show us the vent vine,
Oh, sure.
which is
So
very similar to like the soprano sax key leave? It's very similar concept, except it's sized again according to whatever instrument that you have, and also the models too. Because I know we were going through my my Trevor James and my Mark VI to get the measurements and stuff like that.
yeah. So it is the same idea of centering and locking onto the tone hole, but still allowing air to flow through the tone hole. And the way that this works is, I'll take it out first. Let me see if I can just rest it on my lap here and take it out. So if I just picked the horn up out of my case, I've got it here, and I just release the key pressure, and the little leaves slide out, just like that. So by releasing the key pressure, this little vine of leaf props comes out, and the vent cap vents out the top, and it also then vents out the sides. And it has a minimalist cap, so it barely even touches the inside of your tenon, again allowing the inside of your body to dry as much as possible. Because you know how we get that gunk that sometimes collects around the tenon, and it makes it hard to put the neck on.
Yes.
So this gives it a chance for even the tenon area to dry out, because most end caps, they have that circular tubular design, and they come in pretty close contact and trap a lot of moisture right in that tenon area. But our vent cap design doesn't, and it allows air to flow in through the sides and the top. So even in a tight fitting case, you're going to get a little bit more airflow out through the sides. So you do that, and then I'm not sure if I can get close enough for you to see this, but so now that I have this horn here, I just take the little leaf prop, and you see how I just open up the high F sharp?
Right.
And then I just insert the leaf prop between the tone hole and the pad, and the down pressure of the pad helps lock it into place. So now it doesn't want to come out. And then I just go down the vine, opening up the tone holes. Here's the high E tone hole, opening that up, setting that in. Here's the high F, opening that up, setting that in. And once they're in, they can rotate around freely. And then here's the D sharp, and then the low D. So I'm kind of going slow for demo purposes, but that might have been like 30 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, not even that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that then opens up everything that is normally closed above your left hand. And that was one of those silly aha moments for me. It was like, wait a minute, everything above my left hand is closed and capped. That's where sticky B flat comes from. It's all that gunk incubating and growing in there that drips down. And sure enough, in our field tests with pros, especially tenor players that lean forward at a more aggressive angle because of the nature of the bigger body tube and the longer neck, they have sticky B flat more frequently than alto players. And the tenor players who used a vent vine every day and swabbed their horn, they experienced a reduction in the sticky B flat as well.
Now,
So,
can you
go
also
ahead.
can you store the horn with the vent vine in? That won't be any problem at all, right?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. I wish I had like a mobile camera to show you this, because I can't really show you the case right now. But again, we do a case check in the custom fitting process. We take you through questions about your case, your pad style, your resonator style. If you have kind of rare key heights, like some people on some vintage horns will adjust their palm D super, super low. If you have tone hole crescents, we investigate and get to know your horn, and then we custom fit the vent vine specifically to your make and model and your style of pad and resonator. And then that way we know that it's going to stay locked in nicely. And as part of that, we do a case check. So we do not make vent vines for people that use gig bags. The gig bags are too flexible, and they can be, they have flex walls that can be bumped and squished in ways that will bump the keys open, dislodging each of the little leaf props.
Yeah.
So we discourage soft wall gig bags, but if you have a good fitting hard side case, you're fine. And that's basically it. Yeah. They're so low profile, that you're only putting like at most like an 1/8 inch of distance between your pad and the tone hole. So it's not like radical changes to saxophone geometry. It's just a different style of vent cap and end cap, right? The opposite of an end plug. it's a end breathe. And then the little leaf shaped props, they're there to just help open up the pad, allow airflow around the pad and into the tone hole. And the thing that I like about the vent vine, those are the pads that always rot out fast.
Yes,
those are the ones they leather harden, they become really loud and slappy, and they get funky. They will grow stuff as fast as the low E flat pad, right?
Yeah.
And so using a vent vine is just a way to really reduce that repair expense, extend the pad life. And then if you're doing any sort of like recording thing, or if you're doing classical stuff, if you have a mic close to your horn and your keys are slapping hard shut, it's going to pick that up.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you're a classical player and you're playing really high, really quiet, you don't want those keys being leather hardened and slappy and clacky. So that was one of those things where I didn't think about the clackiness factor until we started seeing classical players use this. And they were the ones who were like, oh my gosh, I can play up high really fast and quiet. And now my pads stay healthy longer, and they're supple. The leather is supple, so
Yeah.
it's been good.
And actually, that's a great segue into your latest endorser, who's a huge, huge name.
Oh my gosh, I
Yes.
had such a fanboy moment. with, Timothy McAllister. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. He is one of the very greatest classical saxophonists. And another of our key leaves artists shared some key leaves with him. And I was, hoping maybe he liked them. And one day I get an email from Timothy, and he says, I've been using these for months, and these are great. I'd love to endorse these. And so yeah, just this very recently, Tim McAllister is a Key Leaves fan, and I'm
Yeah.
thrilled about that, because having him out there as he is. I mean, he just recorded with the London Symphony Orchestra. He teaches at some of the most elite institutions in the world. And he's a very heavyweight player. So having him out there, speaking positively about key leaves and showing, the next generation of sax players how to stop sticky keys, I'm thrilled. I'm totally thrilled. And I'm it's my wife and I, we started this business together, and it's been really humbling to chat with guys like Tim and Ron Blake from the Saturday Night Live band. And just some really great players are very excited about Key Leaves. And then there's this fantastic saxophonist in California named Donna Schwartz.
Oh,
She's been a big fan.
I'm thinking, who's he? Wait, who's the sax? Oh my God, really? No, thank you.
Yeah.
That's too sweet. No, but you know what though? I'm sitting here, and I didn't even create this thing. I'm beaming like a proud mama because I'm so happy for you. Ever since like I met you in January, look at all the stuff that's happening. And as you're telling us your story, you came up with this great idea, and all the stars aligned for things to work, out, and you did tremendous. It's blowing my mind right now, the tremendous amount of detail and precision that went into creating these amazing products, and just doing that hard work. But yet, I was going to ask you as maybe the final question, what kept your motivation going when you were doing all this testing, and thinking, oh my gosh, this may not work. What do I do now? How did you keep your motivation going?
Wow. It was a real roller coaster.
Yeah.
I won't kid you. When when Kristen and I were looking really seriously at whether or not to do this, I mean, I was teaching, I was performing full time, and I was like, are we gonna do this? Like, am I gonna take this on? I'm gonna have to cut back my teaching. Like, are we really gonna do this? Like, are we gonna go big or go home? And so that was the first scary moment. And we looked at the ideas, we ran the numbers, we did the scenarios, and we're like, yeah, we got to do this. It just feels right. It's a nice kind of culmination of my professional experience as a repairman, as a musician, as a teacher, and it just felt like the thing that I needed to do creatively. So that was a scary moment that then launched us. And then we hit this horrible wasteland moment where it was like, okay, now we know what we want. Can we find someone to make it for us? And I'll tell you what, Donna, it was nuts. I could not get anybody to take me seriously. And I, we had people who were quoting us $76,000 just to make the tool to make the Key Leaves sax key prop. And just crazy. They didn't want our business. They just wanted to gouge us because they thought, oh, here's some guy with some patents, and let's see how much we can milk him for. And that was really, really hard. I mean, we fought for months and months trying to find the right production partner that we could trust in the US. And it was hard. I mean, we ended up looking all over the world. We actually abandoned our commitment to the US at one point. We're like, wow, we got to go offshore.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And you know what we ended up doing? in a moment of like, wow, we've come so far. We know that this is right. We know we need to do this, but we haven't found the right production partner. What are we going to do? And to her credit, my wife, she says, look, you need to spend 1 month seeing if you can make this in our garage.
Wow.
And if you can make it in our garage, we just go to market and just prove the concept. And then we go back to these yahoos and we say, do you want to give us a real quote to make our parts?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, honey? I think you're right. And so I became a rapid prototyper. And we launched this product, hand pouring them into molds that we 3D printed in our garage.
Wow.
Because I couldn't find a production partner that would give us real price quotes. It was craziness.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get anybody to take us seriously. And, we're not, I can't pay. Anyway, so we did that, and we made 1,000, and we handmade them in our garage. We did all that in our garage. And when you met me at NAMM, those were key leaves, sax key props that I made by hand in my garage.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The amount of work. Oh my gosh.
And after that, after we got to that point, we're like, okay, we're doing this, and we are bootstrapping. After we did that, then it's just been like crazy, amazing roller coaster. I can't even thank folks enough. I mean, you met me at NAMM, and I was there as a guest of Music Medic, Kurt Alterac. I mean, that's just a fantastic shop, amazing pro sax shop, amazing manufacturer. And he met me a couple weeks before at the International Sax Symposium, and he was like, hey man, this is cool. Come hang out with us at NAMM. And all of a sudden I'm at NAMM. And it just kept growing, and people really resonate. They just resonated with sax players, and now we don't make them in our garage anymore. So that's
awesome.
That's what keeps me going. It's like, hey, we made it past the crazy, and what's the new crazy? And we're just going. We're having fun with it. It's really been a cool kind of creative adventure. I never thought I'd be doing this, but I am, and it feels right, and it's helping people, and so I'm gonna keep doing it.
Definitely. And it's so, thank you for being so candid about that, because a lot of folks tend to see only the good side of what happens to people. They look at these, like for example, these great players, and they're like, oh, it's always been easy for them, they've always had it great, but what they don't know is the struggle, and not only just the struggle just physically, but emotionally, and that's why I was really curious when you talked about, like, how long the process took. It's hard to keep your motivation up, and especially people not believing in you at first, trying to scam you, all those types of things, and still keeping your motivation going so that you can, because it's right, it's the right thing to do, and you had to just have faith.
There's a couple pieces of advice that I've tried to live by through this. One is, when you are really trying to create anything great and true, there will be days where you absolutely know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are a genius and that this is right. And then there'll be days where you have no idea whether or not you are the world's biggest fool. Someone told me that. And you don't know which day it's going to be when you wake up, because things happen and things change, and this is the ride, and get ready, baby. And so that was some advice I got early on, and that was great advice, and so true. So true. I mean, one day, we have a prototype and we're like, man, this thing is amazing. Holy cow, we've got it. Here it is. And then you realize after a few more tests, like, oh no, this is not it. Oh my gosh. And so that was a great piece of advice. And then the other one that I'm trying to live by, a dear friend, my bassist, longtime friend, mentor, Paul Rucker, a great visual artist and musician. He said, the only way you're going to know if this really is, if you're really doing this right, is when you start to get sued.
Oh my God.
I'm like, are you kidding me, man? What? And he's like, yeah, think about it. It's new and great when you get sued. I'm like, oh,
Wow.
yeah, maybe.
Oh,
And
oh,
knock on wood, not yet, but man, I don't know. I don't know. We're taking it one day at a time. We think we're doing, a service to folks, and we're just doing our best. We feel really lucky to be able to do it.
no, and you know what? You definitely are doing a service to folks, and it's definitely helped a lot of people, saved a lot of horns, saved a lot of pads. And the funny thing too, that thing about being sued, the other saying also is like, if you're, putting yourself out there on social media and that kind of thing, you're big when you start to get the haters, and it's like
Oh
the
yeah. Oh, that's such good advice. That is
yeah.
such good advice.
It's the
Yeah.
worst feeling in the world because you know what? There will always be, here's the thing. I liked Bill Clinton as a president, but the mistake he made was he tried to please everybody. And you can't please everybody because you're going to wind up pleasing nobody. And the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is no matter what you do, there's going to be people that love you and people that hate you and a bunch of people in the middle, But the good thing is you're getting a reaction. You're getting the reaction of love and hate. So you know that whatever it's a product or you or your playing is, evoking an emotional reaction, and the great thing, to me, this is all positive. I think it's awesome. And I'm so glad that, I happened upon your little stand with Music Medic at NAM, and I was just checking out the video, and then these three guys walked by. And I was like, this is great. I'm like, oh, that's a good question. Oh, yeah. Oh, and wow, he's really poised when he's answering these questions. This is great. So I'm so glad that we met because I really I feel your passion, with this product and with both products and everything that you're doing. And I think it's so refreshing and it's so great to see, in our community. And I wanted to thank you and thank you for being so candid and sharing everything today. And tell us all again, where can people find you, not only your website, but also on social media?
Sure. So they can find me at rulonbrown.com and social media at Rulon Brown. And then key leaves are online at keyleaves.com. Key like a saxophone key, leaves like leaves it open to dry, keyleaves.com. And we are on YouTube. We're on YouTube at Key Leaves, Instagram at Key Leaves, Facebook at Key Leaves, Snapchat, even though I got to admit, I barely know what I'm doing on Snapchat.
I don't mean use it.
Yeah, we're out there. Instagram is probably our Instagram and Facebook are probably our biggest social media channels. And then Twitter at Key Leaves.
That makes sense too, because it's a visual thing. People need to see this, and they need to see the little movies and the pictures and all that kind of stuff. Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's different. It's different than the way people think, and it's good, and folks, I use this. I do, put out links and stuff like that, for you guys to check this out. I think it's awesome, and yeah, we've got to get more people using this and more band directors encouraging their saxophone players.
Oh,
Yes,
you know what we just did? Thank you for that. We just launched a education program. So
excellent.
band directors and school districts can contact us, and they can get bulk pricing for their marching bands,
That's
their
awesome.
band. Because yeah, I mean, we really and we give them a great discount because we're parents, we're teachers. We want to protect the instruments. We want to save the rental fleets, and then keep kids in band playing rather than sitting out because their horns at the shop. There's a lot of lost, not just money from these problems, but lost teaching opportunity when a kid has a horn that doesn't work well. So yeah, we're really passionate about that. If folks go to keyleaves.com, what is it, keyleaves.com, and then click on the education discount button, they can learn more about that, or just contact us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so awesome, and what a great way to end this amazing interview. I had so much fun talking with you, and again, the passion, the level of detail, and the motivation, the candidness. Thank you so much, Rulon. I really appreciated you being our guest.
Oh, my pleasure, Donna. It's really been great to get to know you too, and thanks for this time and having me on your show. I appreciate it.